So that is a first step. And then, of course, funding for some of the programs that I was talking about. All of those options that I had that got me away from violence, from the gangs, all of that, because I was a product of family violence, are now being eliminated. And so, that is, that gives children and our young people a place to find themselves, to be maybe educated on this issue, and to start talking to our young boys and girls at this level about issues of family violence. So that it's got to be, twofold, and it also has to have funding. And that is the greatest thing that I hear when if men come up with a great solution, some of the men working in domestic violence causes come up with something, and they say, that's fantastic, that sounds like a great idea. Now what, where are we going to take it from? In essence, we're going to take that money away from protective services in order to try some preventative services. And I'm saying, no. It's got to work together. And right now, I'm so glad that people like my mom have a place to go to now. But unfortunately, we're putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. We need to really address the issue before it happens. We need to be proactive.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your story. When I went to the Cleveland Clinic, as part of the intake, they asked if I felt safe at home. I later went to the ladies' room and I found a little box of cards that gave instructions. If you don't feel safe at your home, these are the things that you can do. I wanted to see whether there were other hospitals that you know of, or if there are hospital associations that are encouraging this kind of interviewing and giving, dispensing information about what you can do, and what the schools are doing to identify children who may be in this kind of a troubled situation.
That's another great question. I know that many of the clinics and hospitals, they're certainly much more educated and trained on how to spot the signs of domestic violence, or ask certain questions, or they're looking for things specifically. And in the old days, they had their hands tied, and they couldn't give out that information. So that's the good news. Even corporations, I mentioned this yesterday, a corporation like Mary Kay Cosmetics that does door-to-door, still goes door-to-door to sell products to women. They are usually equipped with 2 pamphlets, one for breast cancer and one for domestic violence resources in their area, because a lot of times, women or those that need it don't know that the resources are in their area, and also because they're either terrified or have a lot of shame about it. They don't know what to do. As far as the schools are concerned, I've spoken to several schools around the country, but I can also tell you, and this is in my area, I live in a beach community in Los Angeles, and there was a program that wanted me to speak at the different high schools and junior highs, and everyone but one school said, you know what, because we're living at the beach, so you can imagine it's upscale, and they said, we don't have this problem here. And the one school that I got to speak at, I spoke to 3 assemblies, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade assemblies. 2 hours later, the principal called me and told me that 7 kids came forward, and 3 were immediately removed by Child Protective Services because they were covered in marks, just like I was at the police station, but it was hidden under their clothing. So so this is an area that said, we don't have this problem here. So this problem doesn't know socioeconomic. It's not a cultural thing. It's not a lower class thing. Everyone is affected by this, and I can guarantee, I could pretty much say that probably 99% of this room, or almost 100% of this room, has known somebody. If it hasn't affected you in your own personal life, we've all known someone who has been affected by this issue. So, if for us to say it's a private family matter or someone else's issue. So it is about educating, and I really believe we have to start educating our young boys and girls so that the images that they see on television, aren't the images that are going to stay with them. And those role models, we have so many wonderful male role models for our young men, and they want to focus on the jerks most of the time. So, I think that's part of all of us kind of coming together and saying we need to educate our communities.
Hi, my name is Sadie Pinckney, and I'm from Shaw High School, and I just have a quick question. Do you think that spanking children is part of domestic violence?
Good question. Do I think it's spanking children? Because I've been asked that question a lot, because I have a 14-year-old son. He's also a freshman in high school. And my wife is an author, and she wrote a book, true story, it took place 100 years ago, about a former slave and a horse that became the biggest box office draw in America. The horse's name was Beautiful Jim Key. And this horse was raised through love and kindness, never hit. And the horse could spell, do math, answer questions from the audience. The President of the United States saw this horse. It's all documented. He would do it with numbers and letters, and he would take it over to a board and, like, you know, spell your name, do whatever. Well, that horse was never touched. So if you can train an animal to do what you want through love and kindness, why do you think you need to beat somebody down physically or verbally to get something out of them? So I believe that there's a lot of different ways to do it. Even as a parent, as a young parent myself, I needed to learn parenting skills, but I didn't have to put my hands on my son to get his attention. And did I make mistakes with him? Of course, like any other parent. You know, but I was also the first one to walk back into the room and say, you know what I just said to you? That was wrong. I shouldn't have said it that way, and I apologize. And so, you know, we have this great give and take. So I don't believe you have to put your hands on your kids. When I went to school at your age, when I started school here in this country, the nuns could hit us with yardsticks, and every principal had a paddle that could paddle you. And so corporal punishment was kind of common. So, you know, when I was, you know, crying wolf, you know, help me, they figured, hey, you know, this is just a kid that he needs to be spanked because he's a bad boy. So, you know, I just don't believe in spanking. I think there's other ways of going around it.
Mr. Rivers, one of the more disturbing parts of your speech was your description of your father's action and a complete inability to determine why he was doing this. Mm-hmm. Do you have any insights to offer us as not as to your personal experience, but at a broader basis of why do abusers act the way they do?
That's a good question, and I think each one is personal. When you talk about this issue about domestic violence, when you break it all the way down, it's about control. It's really about control. And so, you know, there's controlling behavior, and it comes in all different forms, whether it's, you know, physical, verbal, sexual, whether it's financial. You can control somebody that way. You get somebody into, you know, into a situation, and then you say, well, you know, and you basically freeze all the accounts so that person can't have a livelihood unless they stay with you. I mean, there's all kinds of different forms of that. On a personal level, there's no question that my father had a progressively, you know, what I figure some type of progressive mental illness throughout the years, because what my father was doing, the most deviant behavior that he did it talking to you the way I'm talking to you right now, very calmly with a smile on his face. And so I think that there was something probably wrong with my father, you know, and people have asked me, I've spoken to male batterer groups. And usually when I'm done, there's usually about one or two men that will actually come up to me privately, because it's court appointed, they don't want to be there. And I have a couple men that will come up to me after that I've actually connected with, and they'll pull me aside and they say, if your father was alive today, could you forgive him? And I tell them that if my father was, you know, had woken up any morning, including the morning that I had to fight him, and he would have said, I'm sorry for what I've done. There's something desperately wrong with me. I need help. I would have taken him by the hand and led him anywhere he wanted to go, because the only thing a son wants is the love and respect of his father. But my father didn't make that choice. But there's no question that it is all about control, and then there's alcohol and drugs. These fuel the behavior, but, you know, a lot of times people say, well, it's because he was drinking or because he was doing drugs. The reality is that I've known a lot of people that drink too hard and party too hard, and they're non-abusive and non-violent. So, you know, but it does fuel the behavior of domestic violence, of family violence, and any of the other issues that we discussed.
Do you have the statistics on the incidence of women being the creators of domestic violence?
Yeah, and you know, they vary because it's when they've been taken. 85% of domestic violence cases, approximately in our country, are women are the victims. So the other 15% are men, and sometimes it can actually be male on male, you know, from either same-sex, you know, situations, but approximately 15% of reported, you know, remember this is a crime that doesn't get reported that much, but 85% of the cases are, the women are victims of a male abuser, and 15% it goes the other way. And it's the number one reason that women go to the emergency room, and we can just kind of go down the list there. But you know, there's no question. When I speak, I always include men on this too, because the reality is that violence is violence.